Gutierrez was later disbarred for stealing close to $300,000 of her client's money. Strange behavior aside, Gutierrez's blunders regarding Asia McClain and the cell phone evidence were enough to deem her incapable of providing counsel to Adnan. It is clear from the information gleaned from Serial and other sources that the prosecution's case against Adnan was completely lacking substance. There is absence of a clear motive and no physical evidence. The state's entire case was based upon the testimony of a compromised witness and unreliable cell phone records. Though there is an outside possibility that Adnan did in fact murder Hay, it is the prosecution's duty to prove a defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in order to get a conviction. In no way was the evidence presented against Adnan enough to do so. His conviction was the result of gross incompetency by his attorney, Cristina Gutierrez. The evidence presented by the state was in no way sufficient to convict Adnan. His guilt, while still possible, is highly unlikely. The state claimed that something inside Adnan's brain snapped when Hay broke up with him, prompting him to murder her. The Serial team brought in psychologist Charles Ewing to offer his opinion on this matter. He stated that people who lose it do so over a period of time as hateful feelings simmer. Reaching the state of mind to commit murder doesn't happen all at once. There are certain tells, none of which Adnan displayed, that happened within a time frame that exceeded the period from Hay's breakup with Adnan and the time of her death. However, Ewing did leave open the possibility that Adnan could have killed Hay in a dissociative state where the brain blacks out and the perpetrator has no knowledge of what they are doing. There are instances where people have committed murder in amnesia and then attempted to cover it up when realizing what they have done. Ewing pointed out other traits in Adnan that would go against the state's theory that he was a manipulative sociopath. Adnan's behavior while in prison has been exemplary. He has received commendations from the warden and was only reprimanded once in his 18 years behind bars for having a contraband cell phone. This type of behavior is atypical for anyone considered to be a sociopath. Also, while certainly manipulative, sociopaths show no sign of empathy, which Adnan had displayed throughout his childhood and while incarcerated. If Adnan was truly a manipulative sociopath as the state claims, would he be able to keep up a 15-year-long con, proclaiming his innocence while fooling everyone around him? It does not seem possible. But if Adnan did not murder Hay, then who did? It seems highly likely that Jay Wilds was, in some way, involved with the crime. He was able to lead the police to Hay's abandoned car and disclose details of the murder. Wilds sold pot at the time and could have been entangled in some more deviant behavior. He may have implicated Adnan because he was afraid of violent retribution from the true culprit. It is also possible that Jay colluded with the police and implicated Adnan to avoid a drug charge. Wilds himself even describes the repercussions he would have faced if caught selling weed. It wasn't just like I was selling a nickel bag here and there. At the time, this was Maryland in the 90s. The drug laws were extremely serious. I saw the ATF and DEA take down guys in my neighborhood for selling much less than I was at the time. And they were getting sentenced to 3 and 5 years. I also ran the operation out of my grandmother's house, so that also put my family at risk. I had a lot more on the line than just a few bags of weed. A scenario where Jay was arrested on a drug charge, then agreed to implicate himself as an accessory after the fact in Hayes' murder, is a little far-fetched. But the relationship between Wilds and Prosecutor Ulrich certainly raises some eyebrows. A more viable possibility was that Hay was killed by Ronald Lee Moore. Moore was a convicted rapist and murderer that was mistakenly released by the Department of Corrections on January 1st, 1999, 13 days before Hay was murdered. DNA evidence later tied him to the murder of Annalise Lee, another Korean-American girl living in Baltimore, who was strangled to death 9 months after Hay was killed. Moore took his own life in 2012, so he will never stand trial for either murder. But the similarities between the two victims and the manner in which they were killed cannot go unnoticed. It makes the most sense that Hay was killed by a convicted rapist and murderer 13 days after he was released from prison. The Serial podcast sparked a new interest in Adnan's case that was reinforced by other media outlets and on public forums such as Reddit and Twitter. This interest prompted Judge Martin P. Welch to re-examine the case, and in 2016, he granted Adnan a new trial on the basis of ineffective legal counsel. Welch found that Gutierrez's cross-examination of the state's cell phone expert at trial was so deeply deficient, and that her deficiency so avoidable, if she had just employed the twin virtues of reading comprehension and attention to detail, that Adnan's convictions should be vacated and that he should be granted a new trial. Though the state attempted to repeal the retrial and denied Adnan's request for bail, it was upheld by the appeals court panel in 2018. Based on the lack of evidence against Adnan and Asia McClain's testimony placing Adnan at the school library when the murder took place, there is nothing that could convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty. So now, after 18 years of unjust incarceration, Adnan Syed will finally have the chance to be a free man.